Hello everybody, thank you for joining me. Today I am going to be looking at 10 of my all-time favorite Twilight Zone performances from the original series. I have previously reviewed every single episode, and I thought it would be fun to go back and pay tribute to some of the actors and performances that I really liked. Now I have to mention, before I get this started and give you my list, that notice I did say favorite performances, not best. I am not claiming that these are the 10 greatest performances on the show or the 10 greatest actors on the show or anything like that. Although I do think that you could make a case and that some people might think some of these are the greatest performances, but these just happen to be 10 performances that I really enjoyed or felt really fit in with a certain episode or just an actor portraying a very memorable character. And I do realize this is the kind of list that if 100 people made it, they would all have a different list. So without further ado, I will give you my top 10, and these are not ranked in any particular order. I'm just going to go in the episode order in which these performances aired. So we start with number 1, Earl Holliman in Where Is Everybody? This was the very first Twilight Zone episode, and the more I thought about this performance, the better I thought it was, and the more that I liked it. Being the first episode, if Earl Holliman's performance would have failed, I feel like the show wouldn't have succeeded. He also has to pretty much do a one-man show through 90% of the episode. He's always compelling, and he does narration basically to himself. He's talking to the audience, but he's really not acting with anyone else. But yet he makes us a very believable and compelling character all the way through. And he just basically gets the whole show off to a solid start, and I still remember his character. So I felt he deserved a place on the list. Number 2, Burgess Meredith in Time Enough at Last. Now, for those of you that have seen my review on this episode, know that I think this is a very good episode. Not quite an all-time great episode like some people feel it is, but that has nothing to do with Burgess Meredith, who I feel makes the episode as good as it is. He gives one of the all-time great performances. He's one of the most memorable characters ever on the show. And I think the greatest thing that he does, and why so many people do remember his performance, is that he creates sympathy for a character who might not have otherwise earned our sympathy. But that's good acting to make a character this complex. And people still think about him to this day, so I couldn't possibly leave him off the list. And I really enjoy his performance more than anything else in the episode. Number 3, our first female actress, Anne Francis in the After Hours. Now, this is one of my all-time favorite episodes for many, many reasons, but one of them is Anne Francis's very believable and sincere performance. And I do believe being sincere is very important in this type of episode. It's a very odd role if you know anything about the twist to the After Hours. It's a very, very strange twist, but it never feels forced or overdone. Her performance is dramatic, but it's never over-dramatic or over the top. And also, for a character we don't know much about until the end of the episode, due to that being what the plot needs to be, I was always interested and invested in her character, and I never get tired of her performance. And I think making someone invested in your character is the best compliment you can give an actor or actress. Number 4, Brian Aherne in The Trouble with Templeton, which I consider to be a sadly overlooked and very underrated episode. I'd also like to give an honorable mention to Pippa Scott in this episode, who actually would have made this list if I was doing supporting performances. I just didn't feel her role was quite big enough. But I thought Brian Aherne's chemistry with Pippa Scott was amazing in the scenes they did have together. And I just think that he has great chemistry with the whole cast, and he's another interesting character that you want to succeed and win in the end. But the most important thing I think about his performance is that the character changes very naturally through the episode, but he still feels like the same person. I feel sometimes, even though actors try, that when a character changes their personality or naturally progresses, it doesn't always feel like the same character. But here I feel like Brian Aherne was in character the entire episode. He really was Templeton, and I think that's a tribute to him, and that's why his performance makes my list. And also I think an episode that more people need to see. I personally believe it's a bit underrated. In the 5th spot, I couldn't leave this one off. Billy Mumy and It's a Good Life. Another one of my favorite episodes, and really a lot of that reason is because of the whole cast and the believable chemistry between the cast. But Billy Mumy is especially disturbing. He's one of the original creepy small children in television or film. I think he was very revolutionary in that way. He's very entertaining throughout the whole episode, even though he's not really what you would call a very nice character. He has some of the greatest facial expressions I've ever seen. No matter what his mood, you know it just by his facial expressions. And this is another natural progression of the character. He can go from calm to very happy to angry in just a minute, but it never feels forced. It's always very believable. And I just always remember Billy Mumy and It's a Good Life. Definitely one of the great performances in my opinion. Moving on, next on my list is Lois Nettleton in The Midnight Sun, another one of my favorite episodes. It seems to be a pattern, but that's part of the reason that some of these are my favorite episodes is because of the performances. Now, Lois Nettleton does something very different here than a lot of the performances on my list. I feel she's very subtle throughout the whole episode, but in Midnight Sun, I feel that is what the character needs to do. She's always very compelling and effective, and she makes you really believe the situation that she's in, which I think is sometimes not easy to do. She really puts you into the episode. There's kind of a quiet intensity to her performance that I really like, but I think the hardest thing that she pulls off is that she is a vulnerable character. She's not necessarily completely weak as she's going through a situation that means you have to be somewhat strong, but she is vulnerable, and that can be very annoying. But in her case, I didn't think it was annoying. I rooted for her through the whole episode, and she also has a great last scene. I'll just leave it at that. Lois Nettleton, in my opinion, does deserve a place on this list, and maybe one of those performances that I feel doesn't get quite the praise it deserves. Coming in the next spot, number 7, is Gladys Cooper in Nothing in the Dark. This performance once again portrays something different, which is fear. There's a true sense of fear in her performance. She's a very strong screen presence that at times seems to go right through you. At least she did for me. She has a great power, and she's very relatable as a character. I think a lot of people could really relate to her situation and have sympathy for what she goes through. And this is another one of those performances that has a very natural character progression. It's a little emotional, but a lot of times it's subtle, and in Gladys Cooper's subtlety, she really comes across as a strong but vulnerable character. And to be able to portray both of those things and make it believable, I think is a great testament to her as an actress. At number 8, Robert Duvall in Miniature. Another episode I think is good, but not quite great. But Robert Duvall sure does try and make it great, that's for sure. Now, this is a very emotional performance, but it could have been really over the top, but it's not. It works just perfectly. You really believe that this man is in love with a little doll. I mean, there's a scene when he looks at a little doll and cries. Do I really need to say anything more than that? The fact that this whole episode works, especially the ending, is a tribute to Robert Duvall as an actor. Don't really know what else I could say about that one. At number 9, maybe my favorite performance on the show and maybe my favorite episode of the show, James Whitmore in On Thursday We Leave for Home. Where to begin? He portrays a very complex character, and he hits every note and every part of it perfectly. He's a character you can sympathize with because in his mind he feels he's doing the right thing, even if we as an audience know he isn't, and that makes it painful to watch because we know he's really standing for what he thinks is right, even if it might do him in. And the last scene in this episode might be my favorite scene of the entire Twilight Zone. There's just so much going on. I'm actually getting disturbed talking about it right now. I was actually emotionally exhausted at the end of this episode. Generally, I do my reviews right after the episode if I can. Sometimes I have to wait a little bit. In this case, I had to wait a few minutes just to get calm again. I was really emotionally invested in James Whitmore's performance, and that's actually the greatest compliment I can ever give an actor. In my 10 spot, last but not least, Collin Wilcox in number 12 looks just like you. I think this may be the most underrated performance in the show. It's an excellent episode, but what I really like is that not only is her performance very natural, she somehow comes across as feeling out of place in the world she's in, which is exactly how her character should feel. I'm not really sure how she did that. You really feel like she's lost and unsure of what to do. She's very relatable, and you actually do feel bad for her and want things to turn out well, even if we know otherwise. So those are my 10 picks. I tried to pick a variety of performances that I really enjoyed and covered a lot of different ground. I wanted to pick a comedic performance, but I just didn't think there was one quite strong enough to make this list compared to some of the dramatic performances that I picked. But I did pick at least one performance from every season as well. Like I said, I realized this is just my list. If other people made a list like this, it might have very different performances on it. So if you'd like, in the comments, you can let me know some of your favorite performances, and if I missed any that you really enjoyed. And there will be some more special themed Twilight Zone videos coming up in the coming weeks, including one on my favorite Twilight Zone twist, so you can look for that soon. And as always, thank you very much for watching.